welcome back to Switch to Linux. So, I was looking at the news today, and I saw just a couple of neat, interesting little articles, and so I wanted to take some time and have a look at them, and we're going to talk a little bit about this crazy antivirus stuff. There's so much involved in this that there's just stuff muddled all over the place. There's people throwing out opinions. There's some folks that say switch to Linux, it never gets viruses. There's just so many things all over the place. And what we're gonna do here is just kind of delineate some of this and probably just chat about it a little bit. We're gonna start on the Android part because that's what the news that springed it on, and then we're just gonna go right on through this. So, before we get into that, I will say hello to everybody. Greetings, Ryan. And if you have not gone up through and looked at the chat, the Is It a Hot Dog app is now officially available on the Android store. Ryan has downloaded it, and sadly his dog is not a hot dog, and nor his lawnmower. So it begs this fascinating question: what in the world would we do without the Not Hot Dog app? We would not know what we could eat and what we could not eat, at least where hot dogs are concerned. Of course, that begs another question: is a hot dog even edible? So, hello, Liam. I'm a Wami-some. Greetings, all. Hello, Clayton and Sandman and Lemler3. How's it going? JJ Game. Oi to you two. You're not out of the woods if you play Linux. There we are. Here's how we can wrap it up. Yep, you're not out of the woods if you're on Linux. All right. So first, we're just gonna have a quick look here. Here is the Not Hot Dog app. I am very, very saddened. This guy over here, Brandon Hart, gives it a 1-star review. He says, "I took a picture of a package of hot dogs and was told it is not a hot dog. I am so sad." Well, I gotta say, if the picture of the package of hot dogs says it's not a hot dog, the app has a serious flaw. I was actually surprised how few permissions this thing takes. Photo, media files, storage, camera, full network access. I don't know. I'm not sure I would install it, to be perfectly honest with you, but regardless, the Not Hot Dog app is now available if you are an Android user. Be warned, anything that you use on your Android can be problematic. Is the fake antivirus program named CM Security, or is it Clean Master? Actually, there are about 500 fake antivirus apps. And that's kind of going to be where we start today. So I ran across this article. So basically it is, can you trust your Android antivirus software? It turns out that there's about 4,000 or 5,000 of these things that are available if you just get onto a Google app or any store app and you type in Android antivirus or antivirus on your Play Store, and then you can download about 5,000 different apps, and turns out a good 10% of them, about 12% actually, according to the researchers, about 12% of them were all Trojans, virus programs, malicious software, or what we'd call pups. In fact, the one of them that they looked at, it was really funny because they basically threw a generic antivirus scanner on there, but it was an ad-enabled thing that prompted you at startup to install more of their software to run more of their ads, and their app itself identified itself as a potentially unwanted program. And I just thought that was great. So that's if you're running a virus scanner, you might see malware or you might see pups. A pup is a potentially unwanted program, meaning it's some program, it's doing something. We don't really know what, because we don't know. So that's kind of what the concept is here. And so we're going to have a look at these articles here. Of course, the originating source is Risk IQ, which is I believe more of they do have a business end to it as well. But what Risk IQ did is they wanted to look out. Mostly they were interested in this because of what happened is with this Wannacry, all sorts of people were jumping on the Wannacry news like, Wannacry's everywhere. It's going to kill the world. Everybody's going to blow up. Wannacry's here. Let's all go cry now. Got some tissues? I need some tissues. I want to cry. Now, Wannacry, to be clear, was a Windows virus. Okay? Oh, look. I found a pup. It's a potentially unwanted puppy dog. No, this is a kitty. Greetings, everybody.
Hey, everybody, be careful with your Android apps.
All right. So, as Wannacry comes out, Wannacry only would affect Windows systems, unpatched Windows systems. If you could manage to keep your Windows 10 system from being patched, it could have been impacted. Mostly it was the XP7 machines that had not been updated since March were the ones most impacted by the Wannacry outbreak. But since Wannacry everywhere, blah, 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 antivirus, blah, 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 all sorts of people decided to jump on the bandwagon and say, I bet I can make some money with this. And so they pushed out fake Wannacry protectors for Android, which Wannacry does not impact your Android phone, sorry to say, or happy to say, I guess. But a lot of people would push these programs out. And so this is just one growing problem that you don't find this quite as readily on the Apple Store. Like, there's one or two malicious pieces of software on the Apple Store that somehow sneak by the armed, guarded, walled garden there. But what is in Google, it's like people can just dump things in. And I'm not sure how the Windows Store is. I know when I had a Windows phone, it was so bad. It was like there were hundreds of the same program by the same people, just different things. It's just insanely giant mess. And but in Google, it's really easy to just have anybody push an app through. And so you really have to be careful if you're on an Android and you have apps that you're going to download. You really have to be careful that you are not downloading malicious stuff. And so Risk IQ on this fake Wannacry protectors launched out a study, and they so here's some examples they found. So here is one of the antivirus apps, and these are all of the antivirus scanners, the real ones that identified it as fake. Yeah, this was a problem. It's basically a Trojan. So a Trojan, of course, named from the Trojan horse of Greek fame. The Trojan is a program, an application that would get installed on your computer that allows somebody to access a backdoor. So while there may not be any open security vulnerabilities, a Trojan could get on your computer or on your phone and allow any remote party to do things on your computer or on your device, whatever it happens to be. Now the challenge is with apps, every app. I just scared the kitty. I'm sorry, kitty. It's okay. Every app is potentially a Trojan, because a lot of these apps are pushed out by app factories, and the app is delivered to the company with a dashboard that they use to analyze the data. And an app, you can have a basic text messaging app that allows full access to your camera. You can have a game that has full access to your camera, and most people don't bother reading the permissions. So anytime you go in there to look at an app, look at the permissions to make sure the permissions are appropriate. Because any app can be a Trojan, really. And then it begs the question does what the developer says is the permissions, is that in reality? Usually that's going to be pretty close to reality because there is some checking on the Play Store. All right, so here they found 6,295 total apps claiming to be antivirus solutions. Of the 700 of them triggered blacklist detections, meaning that real, true antivirus applications had identified issues in these. Now, there are some false positives, and there are some that slip through that are viruses, malware, or pups that are not necessarily detected. That's always a distinct possibility. So here's one key point in antivirus is just because you've installed antivirus does not mean that you're intrinsically protected. It's like I have antivirus. I'm going to go everywhere crazy and shady on the internet now. No, don't do that. Don't do that. You still have to be conscious. And if you get conscious enough and intelligent enough, you can get to the point where you don't even need to run it. But, you know, and that's kind of something else we can get into. And so here's this one here, the antivirus. This is identified as a virus, as according to these guys. Here's this guy here, the ad security is also virus. And so what we can find is that there are right now just over 4,000 active antivirus apps, and about 12% of those are actually viruses. So, you know, if you just get on there and download an app, then there you got a 10% chance that it is actually a virus, according to several different things. So Google's trying to get better at these, but that's kind of what happens. Here's some more. This is this one here. This is Virus Total, MP Security. There you go. So this is kind of there. We got a lot of activity going over in the comments. Let me shoot over there real quick. All right. So, CM Security, Clean Master, yeah, there's a lot. Greetings, Chuck, how are you? 2 wonderful garbage apps that try to be antiviruses and fail miserably. Yeah, my favorite is the one, we'll look at that article in a minute, but it detects itself as a virus. Good job, app developers, good job. I don't use AV. I am a kamikaze. Yeah, I'm actually kind of with you on a lot of systems in ways. You know, if you have a good internet protocol, you use the internet with a brain, and you lock yourself behind a good firewall. Like, for example, I could have had unpatched XP systems on my home network, and it would not have been impacted, because guess what? Wannacry went through port. What port was it? I forget now. I forget what port it went through, but it went through a very specific port. Blocked on my network. You know? So if one of the computers got in, it was blocked from the outside. If it got in somehow to one of my computers, then it very well could have infected other computers, but it wasn't going to get in from the outside just by worming its way through. And so that's kind of that. Sounds like CM Security. Yep. Greetings, FPS Machete. Greetings, Daniel. King Root, one-click root is totally not a Trojan. That's right. Known for doing shady things like sending data to the Chinese server. Yeah, so is Lenovo. Ooh. Greetings, Bad Wolf Blaze. How's it going there? What port, by the way? 443, 445. Yeah, 445. That was it. Thanks, Jose. That is correct. 445. JJ Game. I have 2 Android devices, and if I need to download an APK, I do it on my device. I have no valuable things on. Yep, that's a good way to do it. Is just test it on devices that you know are okay if they get fried. All right, so here's the actual article I was looking at. So they looked at people capitalizing around Wannacry and several other applications out there. And so all of these things show up. So Risk IQ looks at the application. See if there's anything new in here. Yeah, it looks like ZDNet just pretty much stole everything from Risk IQ. So here is, so McLaffey here, that's what I call McAfee, it's McLaffey. McLaffey is warning about the fake Wannacry protectors, so that's kind of what we have here. So are Android devices affected by the self-propagating ransomware? Nope. But this one here, this guy here is called out. Once you install the program, it gives you this warning. Let me see if I can bump this up in size a little bit here. Looks like the image, I guess the image is getting a little bit bigger. It says, warning, you are one step away from cleaning any malicious threats found on your device. We have put a lot of time to create this application. Please install one of our free applications to continue and support us. If you will contribute in making this application better. offered are fake. The only function is the app has repackaged a scanner that can detect the presence of a few ad libraries. For that reason, and in spite of the preceding warning message, it is clear the developers put little time in the development. The app labels itself as a medium risk. Oh, that's just classic. But the sad thing is they probably made hundreds of thousands of dollars pushing this thing out, on little ads or whatever. And so I would kind of support a new app developer or a shady app developer like this having a period of time before you can make money on something like this, So here's another one, the anti-Wannacry virus. Yeah, if you're on an Android, don't worry about Wannacry. It will not impact you. And of course, Android's trying to fight back against some of this kind of stuff by doing this. Android developers recognize Android excellence on Google Play. Of course, that's not going to turn into who pays the most, will it? But, these are some of the apps that have been labeled as excellent programs based on the fact that they follow the Android's best practices. They're known to be relatively free of malware, whatever else. So if you play any of these games here, they're probably okay. If you're like me on my smartphone, I have never had... I think when I had my very first Android phone back in 2012, I think it was, I had Mega Jump on my phone. And then when I switched to iPhone, a little over a year later, I got the phone in August of 12. Was it August 12? No, it must have been August 11. I think I got the phone in August 11. And then I think it was February of 13. I thought it was earlier than that. I'm totally getting my times mixed up. It might have been August of 10 when I got the Android. I forget. But regardless, about a year or so later, I got an iPhone. At that point in time, I've never had a game on my phone since then. It's just we carry the thing around. It's too easy to waste too much time on a phone. I'd rather use my phone for productive things and not mess around with games. But anyway, that is kind of what Android is doing there. So I have two Android. Let's see. I have a backup question. All right. What's the question? All right. Greetings, Captain Cyberspace. How's it going there? I have one device for security, and it has free software only. And the Hot Dog app. Okay. avtesting.org. Independent evaluation of various AV programs. Cool. avtesting.org. Let's have a look at that. avtest.org. All right. Well, I've never seen this website, but something to have a look at. So 32 products. So it looks like they're a group that is just a IT company evaluating various applications. So, yep, you can have a look. Let's go ahead and look at mobile devices, see what we get. There's AVAS, Dr. Web, SAT. So I recognize these names. So, if you did want to run an antivirus, use one of these security apps from a name that as much fun as I like to make it McLaughy. They do have an app, and if I were wanting to run a good application, I'd use that. Like this one here, they have bad protection, PF safe bad protection. But, the ones from fairly well-known groups seem to be doing a pretty good job. So, that's a cool place. Thanks for pointing that out, Chuck. That's awesome. All right, so Bad Wolf Plays. My HDD died, but I was able to pull my OS backups and made new Acronis and put them on a new SSD, but they appear to be corrupt. Is there a way to save them, or are they toast? Your files, let's see. Pull my OS backups. What, the backups are corrupt? Yeah, if the backups are corrupt and the hard drive is dead. Now, if it's is it an SSD or I'm guessing it's an old spinning drive, since you said that one's an HDD. The SSDs will break down a lot, but the good thing is that the write breaks faster than the read, and so if the drive stops working, you usually have plenty of time to pull the data off of the SSD. But the HDDs right now, I think, will still last a lot longer. Yeah, if you have backups and they're corrupted, I'm probably going to guess they're lost. What OS are we talking about? Are we on a Windows or a Linux? CM Security made fake AV test website, which is hilarious. I can only imagine. I'm not sure I want to go there. Hi there, Zoomped. 1975, greetings. Don't bang your phone on the table, please. All right. If I set it down right here, though, it'll sound loud because it's right next to the mic. But yeah, I stopped using my mic stand. I found I got a good enough mic sound here without having a big old thing in the way that looked like I was trying to eat it. Of course, then I'd take a picture with the not hot dog app, and it might even say it's a hot dog. I'm wondering if I took the microphone, put it in there, put it in a bun, put ketchup and mustard, if it'd say it's a hot dog or not. I'm just curious. Ryan, giving you ideas. Domain is not really convincing. It's really hilarious how they try to make themselves look legit. See, now you're making me want to go there, man. Come on, stop it. Got a website for me? Use Malwarebytes on my phone. There you go. That's good. Norton is the crappiest AV I've ever seen. It's rivaled only by Avast and crappiness. Not surprised. People were responding to a comment today. If you're over there across the pond from me, I saw an interesting piece of news over there. A friend was just emailing me back against it. If you are on Madrid public transportation, no manspreading, please. Oof. Okay, let's see. Had to forcibly remove Norton from more laptops. Yeah, than almost any actual virus. Yes. Norton is a pain to remove. Like, you actually have to go to Norton and download the Norton antivirus program removal tool to get it off of your Windows computer. Scary. Every AV is pretty crappy. Just stay with Windows Defender to get the same protection, just a bit less. Yeah. And that's what, if you're running Windows, of course, I'm running Linux here. If you're running Windows, Windows Defender has gotten good enough that I frankly think Windows Defender is perfectly adequate for anything. In fact, I had, when I first got my my Windows 7 computer that I use for my web development stuff, I got a Norton 360, and that thing there with a Core i5, and I think it still only had 4 gigs of RAM at the time. Man, that thing, Norton made that computer crawl like a slug. I took it off, got rid of all that crap, and computer still to this day, without running antivirus on it, to this day the computer runs perfectly fine like the day I bought it. I mean, it's like, yeah. So, no, you don't have to run antivirus on Windows. You just have to not be stupid. Clam AV, yeah, if you're using Linux, Clam AV. Norton is malware. I'm not sure Norton is malware necessarily, but it's crapware. It's definitely a PUP, potentially unwanted program. But that's it. All right. So I guess this brings us into the next kind of discussion, is more like the Linux-y end of this. I think a lot of people probably join for that part. But of course, as far as talking about the Android, kind of we can keep bringing that up if we want, but the conversation comes out more like, do we need to run antivirus on Linux? And this is one of those things that, for me personally, I don't, just because, I've done just fine for years and years on Windows without running antivirus. Although I think I still have an original Norton antivirus back on floppy disks. I think I still have a floppy disk version of Norton somewhere. I'm sure it probably would not do a very good job, but I'm okay on Linux without running antivirus. Now, I do make the argument if you're running a Linux server, running an antivirus may not be a bad thing, because what I had done a video a long time back, and the video I did a long time back was on making a case for running antivirus on Linux, primarily on Linux servers. Because what happens in my opinion is that Linux servers can become not like a not a place where viruses are executed, but what you might call in the biological world as a a virus carrier. So you could get on there with your viruses, and you could have a Linux server with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Windows viruses installed. And with that being said, then what would happen is they would be accessible, but they would never be known that they were there. So it's kind of like the way a carrier host would have an antivirus, or like a disease in them. Like, for example, deer. Deer harvest the deer ticks. Now, in the Northeast United States, Lyme disease is becoming this scary, dangerous thing. But it's carried on by the ticks grabbing it from the deer. The deer end up producing, holding the virus in a carrier stage where they have the virus, but it does not impact them. Then it transmits to the tick. When the tick transmits it to the human, it can become fatal. And so you have a lot of issues in that respect. And with that being said, a Linux server hosting files can become a breeding ground for viruses to be there. They wouldn't sit here and what am I trying to say? They wouldn't execute. But if you were to take that server and run antivirus on it, you would detect them and pull them out. Now, other people are saying, no, you never need to run. I just threw in the comments the video there. Let me throw it on a card here as well. One of the things that you need to do is you need to not run antivirus, is what some people will say, if you're on Linux. And sometimes that can make sense, that if you're on Linux and you're being careful, you're probably okay, because a lot of the viruses that spread around target Windows. Well, a lot of that has to do with because Windows is a bigger attack vector. There are viruses for Linux and there are security vulnerabilities, but we have to make the distinction between what is a security vulnerability and what is a virus, okay? And that kind of gets muddled in the middle of it all. So a virus is a known executable code that does some malicious function on a computer. A security vulnerability is a hole in some system. An antivirus program does not solve a hole in the system. An antivirus program will stop a known, and keyword is known, malicious code. But just because you're running an antivirus doesn't mean it's going to stop the code. Now, it's broad. There's more issues, because on Linux, a lot of people now, and a lot of these newer distros that are really targeting the Windows users, are coming with Wine pre-installed, and this is dangerous because Wine is a Windows, we'll call it a Windows compatibility layer. It allows you to run Windows executable files on Linux globally. That means that you are now taking a Linux computer that was probably perfectly fine, and you are exposing it to the capability of running Windows programs, which includes Windows viruses. So if you do not need Wine on your computer, it should not be on your computer, period. Make sure we keep that in mind. Make sure it is not on your computer. Now, there are, I have Wine installed over here, but only I have it installed exclusively on Play on Linux. You can't see the computer right now because it's in the comments in the way. But I have Play on Linux to run a Windows program specifically inside that small environment that I have it on. That's a safer place to do it, but you still got to be careful. It's even better if you are going to run some Windows programs that you have even a separate distro. Since Linux is so portable, you can pop out another hard drive or run another program or have another internal hard drive and do something else for Wine-based programs. But the next problem with putting Wine on a Linux distro is it really doesn't help you run a lot of Windows programs anyway. And so it's a flat out lie to sit here and say, this is Linux and we put Wine on it, therefore it can run your Windows programs. So now you have a Linux system that is more susceptible to the Windows viruses that you're telling people not to run an antivirus on. That is where your problem comes into play. So be smart still. Don't install Wine unless you need to, and you should be fine to not necessarily need an antivirus. That's kind of what it takes. Now, of course, there's a lot of people that have had a lot of different things. There was a very famous video by Matthew Moore, and I actually had a neat privilege of I talked with him for a little while after a Fishman Loves Linux live stream one day. We were all over there and on Google Hangouts. So everyone else hung up, and it was just me and Matthew for a good few hours, actually. And he was talking about it because people criticized him for that video disabling the comments. He said he disabled the comments because people were just not willing to appropriately communicate. And I disagreed with the premise of the video because every virus that the thing found was DLLs and executables. But again, a Linux system can house all these DLLs and executables, and if you're not running Windows, not running an antivirus program, then they can stay there. They're not doing anything. It's like a carrier host. And then if it gets spread out somewhere somehow, we have all of these viruses that if every Linux web server out there and every Windows web server out there ran an antivirus program, you could potentially kill viruses, known viruses at least. It's a way out there theoretical. But if you have a Linux server that's hosting websites, file exchanges, as anything else, and you run antivirus, you're going to do a whole lot better. But if you're sitting here going, you don't need to run antivirus because Linux doesn't get viruses, well, there are a few viruses, like 12, I don't know the exact number, but there's a few viruses. But you can store all those Windows viruses on them on a web server, which a Windows computer can access, and nobody's much for the wiser because everyone's sitting here going, you don't need to run antivirus on Linux. So if you're on a desktop, Linux desktop, you're not running a server, and you're smart, you probably don't need to run antivirus. So that's kind of that. All right, let me back up here to the comments. Comments is going crazy there. I should have lit myself on fire there for that one. Let's see. Every AV is pretty crappy. Just stay with Windows Defender. We were there already. Clam AV is good. Yeah, Clam AV. Is there a GUI for Clam AV? Anybody know? I know command line you can use it. Norton is malware. Okay. ESET Nod 32 AV works well on Linux using it on my Mint box. Yeah, a friend of mine runs that on the Windows computer. It's does a pretty good job over there. Using Sophos on my computer. Never used it. So far I like it. I don't use AV on the desktop. No. Best thing about having AV on Linux in a mixed environment is that I can identify Windows-based viruses in your network. Yes, Chuck, that is exactly what I probably just spent the next 5 minutes saying. You clarified it. Yes, you can identify Windows-based viruses on a network without the possibility of the virus executing. That's another valid point. Squid Master Race. FreeBSD for the win. Nice. I have a router built using... Yeah, I have to play with pfSense sometimes. When my router dies, I'll start messing with that. I should actually start doing that before my router dies so I don't run out and buy a new router. I'll have something on backup for when it's ready to go. Dad's been using MacKeeper, very shady Mac antivirus, which executes malware like payloads, uses pop-ups to advertise, and uses fake virus scans. Oh, please educate your father. I know he's probably suffering from powdered butt syndrome. Ever hear of that? Powdered butt syndrome is the bad syndrome that once somebody has powdered your butt, i.e. your parents, they've changed your diapers, whatever, raised you, they don't want to hear about anything you have to say. Now, computers, they'll usually listen to younger people. Usually it's about sex and about money. You know, they don't want to hear about that from their kids. You know, computers though, you can really get in there and talk about computers, because, you know, all these finagled kids and all their smartphones and all their computers, they're all computer geniuses. Actually, they're not, which is kind of scary, but anyway, happens. I tend not to worry that much about viruses anymore when using Linux. What you really have to worry about nowadays in terms of desktop usage is online security and remote exploits. Yes. Greetings, Dominique. How are you? I don't use Wine, don't like it. Yeah, Wine is kind of a pain. MacKeeper, which is paid, uses Avira, which is free. That's hilarious. Yes. Buy our system that we're going to continue to monetize by giving you annoying pop-ups and fake virus alerts, and then we're just going to use we're just going to go ahead and use a free package. Thought Apple did not get viruses. Yeah, not really. About as many Mac viruses as there are Linux viruses. What is my favorite distro? Linux Mint Cinnamon. That's what I'm on right now. If I can find my scene. Here we are. Here's my Linux Mint Cinnamon computer. Complete with my nice custom-built backgrounds. And I have a theme installed called Glass Mint. So that's what I'm using for my distro. That is my favorite. I also have a Linux Mint KDE over here, out of view because of the comments, which is pretty cool. If you are going to run KDE, though, don't do it on Linux Mint. Linux Mint KDE is pretty buggy. You should hijack his hardware, put Linux on it. I would. Well, dads, I'd rather not have my dad freak out. Yeah, especially if it's a Mac, man. Don't mess with the Apple fanboy, man. The Apple fanboys have been yelling at Eli, the computer guy, for merely being critical of what Apple's doing with their latest line of computers, which includes a iMac Pro that starts at $5,000 and is completely non-upgradable, not even the RAM. Yeah, it's kind of scary. Oh boy. Oh boy. Oh boy. Don't mess with them Mac people's computers, man. Be more concerned about vulnerabilities. A good website compares per operating system. Yep. CVEdetails.com. Yeah, CVEdetails.com does operating system vulnerabilities and things. Although I did a video on this at one point in time, and even what they have can be misinterpreted. I think it was a Matthew Moore video where he went through and looked at some of the things. I like the guy, by the way. He's a great guy. I like the things on there, but he kind of misinterprets, like, well, Linux, look at all these things versus the viruses on Windows. Yeah, the Windows viruses are only for like the last 5 years because that's one small version of Windows. The Linux goes back to like the beginning of time, and almost all of those are resolved. Father trusts MacKeeper and says he paid for it and it's safe because he paid for it. Many times it's unsafe, and I even showed him multiple articles about MacKeepers. Yeah, sorry, man. Sorry, man. Just nod your head and smile and blacklist his IP address from your computer. Pull listed vulnerabilities from MITRE. Linux tops the list, but from my analysis, most are local access vulnerabilities versus remote. Is Kubuntu a good distro? Kubuntu. Kubuntu is not too bad. I looked at that one. I think a lot of people who run KDE will say if you are really wanting to look at running KDE, people say that OpenSUSE is the best. Here I will put a link to my KDE showdown. I looked at Neon and Kubuntu. A little bit of information there. So with that, if you want to stay in a Debian type environment, probably I think that Kubuntu might be your best bet. Some people might say Neon, but the problem with Neon is it's mostly built as a KDE testing ground, so it's not quite as full of a distro, so you'd have to do a whole lot more work versus Kubuntu is going to be pretty much ready to go out of the box. And I have not used Kubuntu enough to know if it has the same bugginess that Linux Mint KDE does. But if you're looking at just KDE general and you don't care about the base, I hear that OpenSUSE is the best KDE environment. But that's kind of my thoughts there. Running Kubuntu, there are some things I don't like, so I'm trying different distros. What are some of the things you don't like, Captain Cyberspace? That'd be a neat discussion. Tom, how's your opinion on Manjaro? I've only, let's see. Yeah, I've done a few days on Manjaro. I like Manjaro, I really do. The only reason I'm not running it is because it does require you to learn a different package manager. If you are wanting to run like an Arch type system, Manjaro is one of your absolute best bets. And frankly, I just didn't use it as much as I really liked it. I didn't use it because Linux Mint Cinnamon was great. And I knew about that. So Manjaro, though, is awesome. If you are looking for something in that general family or in the more of the Arch-based family, Manjaro rocks. I like it quite a bit. And it has, it has the stability, so it's not like pure Arch where, tomorrow's system could very well break your system. It is a little bit more stable than that. Mint KDE 18.2 is much better. Previous release. I don't think 18.2 KDE is out yet, unless it was released in the last couple days since I looked at the KDE list. 18.1 KDE, I'm not sure if this is 18.1 or 18.0. Let me have a look. Looks like mine's probably 18.0. So I don't know. Maybe I should upgrade to 18.1 and see if that resolves any of the bugginess. I see little things like, if I'm doing video or even music, every 5 minutes or so, I'll get a blurb. I'll get some little blurb in the thing, and sometimes managing files is a pain. And it seems like between transitioning windows and things, it seems pretty slow. I thought that was probably due to the hard drive, but this thing is now running a full SSD. It should be way rocking better than it is with an SSD in there. But so anyway, I like Manjaro Cinnamon. Oh, that'd be a cool one to try out. Checked out Linux Mint KDE 18.2. I'm like, I'm guessing. Let's see. It is out. Huh. It was released on Monday. XFCE and KDE are out now. Okay. Yeah, that was new. I didn't check. I guess I didn't check since last week. So yeah, earlier this week they released the Linux Mint 18.2 KDE and XFCE. Awesome. Hey, thanks for alerting me to that. That's awesome. All right. Dad is not an Apple fanboy. He just thinks it's out of the woods of viruses, which is not. He finds many apps, DMG files, and just installs them because he can, which is really bad for security. Yep. Say it, but he'll learn. Yep. I read some articles on ArchWiki about antivirus and firewall. Later I will try and install some, but not entitled to do so. Apple nowadays is not about computing, but about vanity and hipster. I am a greater hipster than thou art. In fact, I'm such a greater hipster. I was thinking about getting one of those little wraparound mustachy things, maybe a soul patch, just to show how hip I am. I might even dye my hair and get a tattoo. No, I think I'll not be a hipster. I'll just stick with Linux. Thanks. Last thing I want to do is potentially identify with an Apple fanboy. Although getting a big old apple on my forehead might rock. I don't know. Oh boy. SUSE KDE right now can attest to the fact it does have a good implementation. Not sure if it has the best implementation out there, but it's up there. Yeah, a lot of people that have tried a lot of different KDEs have told me OpenSUSE is way better than my my Mint, which I've always known I've had Mint problems. It's just I just didn't care. In fact, I should really change this. What I should really do with this other computer is, especially since there's really nothing on it, is I really should install a completely different family on it so I can get more experience in another one. Like Manjaro would be the awesome thing to run on that. Manjaro or something like that. Would not want to run Fedora. I'm not a huge fan of Fedora. Oh, somebody's just saying I'm using Ubuntu. Think about switching to Fedora. Yeah, I'm not a Fedora fan. A lot of it was all of the things that you had to do after installing it, and I think several of those are now resolved. I think the list has probably gone from like 25 down to like 18, but Fedora is, to me, it's a distro that still takes a lot of work, but it is definitely the poor man's Red Hat, that's for sure. So for that, it's good, it's stable. And also Fedora is more about the philosophy of Linux. Like Linux Mint is like the anathema of some of your hardcore Linux guys that are like, open source and free all the way. Linux Mint is horrible. No. Linux Mint is Linux that works, and I like it. But Fedora does take a much closer approach to the free and open source platform that the Open Source Foundation would support. They would well more support Fedora than they would support Linux Mint for sure. But regardless, so I think Fedora is good. It's just its philosophy, for me personally, its philosophy gets in the way of my functionality. And once your philosophy gets in the way of my functionality, now I have to make a decision. Now, Windows philosophy got in the way of my functionality, and I abandoned it because there was no way around it. Well, of course, their philosophy went way the other side. Fedora is very good on its free open source philosophy. So I guess that's the final point. Also thinks everything I put for his security on his computer is a virus. Facepalm. Yeah. Your dad's somewhat paranoid. 18.2 is still in beta, but it's still stable. Yeah, I looked at Cinnamon 18.2 and Mate 18.2. They were really good. Small things like, for instance, my SQL running, which takes about 300 megabytes of RAM. The package manager crashes every time I use it. Solace is the one to watch. Extremely fast and stable. Yeah, I think I did a video on Solace. Did I do a video on Solace? I'm pretty sure I did. If I can spell Solace. Yeah, actually I did 2 videos on Solace. I missed some stuff the first time around. And so here is a Solace link. That's what I did on Solace. Yeah, I liked Solace, and the guys over there that run it got in contact with me when I missed some pretty important things on the really. I can't have 2 cards promoting the same. Oh, right. Copy image address. I opened it, not copied it. I'm sorry. I put the same link in the description twice. I apologize for that. Come on. Copy link address. I'm having a very difficult time with my copy pasting today. There we go. That's the correct Solace link. Drop the Solace link in there, so that's the correct one. All right. Yeah, Solace is pretty sweet. What is that? Is that... I forget the name of the desktop environment. Help me out with the desktop environment. Got back. Yeah, he got that back from when he had a Windows computer, and caution, it was 8 years ago. Yeah. Still didn't trust me because of something I did 8 years ago. Aren't you still pretty young? Yeah. Oh, boy. Hopefully you matured in 8 years. All right. Not recommend that. Stick with the Debian distros. Go for Archbase. Okay. Okay, you're 15 now, so you were 7 years old, and he's still paranoid because you did something to his computer when you were 7. I really, really hope, Ryan, that you have grown since then. And it sounds like you have. Just beware of that hot dog app. All right. Way behind the stream. As to your question, both Linux and Windows. I don't even remember what my question was. Oh, I remember now. Oh, so you had a hard drive that had both distros on it. Well, you should be able to save the Linux distro, just by booting up a new operating system and then hoping you have your data. Greetings, Shurta. How are you? Why do you think makes Linux Mint so easy to use? Because out of the box, I don't have to do anything to it. It works, and some of it's the familiarity, because I came from the Windows platform. I like the Windows platform, and in that respect, that I really wanted to use a system that was good. As far as worked well for me functionally, so that's kind of why I stuck with it. Additional to that, it has a lot of utilities built directly in that I don't have to install anything else or hunt around for things. It just seems like a very good, very full, complete system. So that's why I think it's easy to use in that respect. And there are a lot of online resources. Anything that would apply to Ubuntu would generally apply to it. So you have all the help support forums from the both different big Ubuntu forums. That's why I think it's so easy to use. That, and for the most part, you really don't even need to enter the terminal for about anything. And if you're looking for a production computer without having to mess with it, that's it. Now, if you're one of the Linux guys that really wants to dive in there and mess with stuff, yeah, that's cool. I love Linux Mint. It's much better than Windows 10. Absolutely, I agree with that. CentOS is good alternative for Fedora. Yeah, CentOS. Not sure I've used CentOS much. I think I booted it up once. Just worried about the OS backups. Yeah, I mean, yes, you can. I mean, did you do backup verifications? That's one of the things. In fact, I think it was Eli, the computer guy, had a video on this earlier this week where a junior developer was handed on his first day of the job. He was handed a little spreadsheet, or a little fact sheet for testing his local database instance, and they had literally on the documentation that management gave him to set up his environment, they had login credentials for the full production database. The guy made a wrong command and fried the whole production database. Well, if that wasn't bad enough, you can guess how bad this company was. They never verified their backups, so their backups didn't work. They lost their production database, and now they're blaming this junior developer. And Eli, the computer guy's like, yeah, you need to be like cleaning toilets for the next couple months. But really the guy that needs fired is the CTO and the manager for having policies so bad that if a junior developer is able to wreck your system, you have problems as the CTO. And I understand that, I have some plans in place for if catastrophic stuff were to happen on some sites that I manage. So, we need to keep that kind of stuff in mind. Watch out. Kororo is a better alternative to Fedora. CentOS is for server. Yeah, Kororo, I really like Kororo because it is like, let's see if I can spell it right. It is it's kind of like, I called it like Linux Mint for Ubuntu. So I did one on Kororo here. It's basically, or maybe you could say it's Fedora with all of that stuff that you have to do, already taken care of for you. So I like that. If I was going to run a Fedora, I'd actually run Kororo, in place of that. So that's kind of what I would do with that. So Mint combo with wine is perfect with gamers. Yeah, there's a few video games that I have on an Xbox that I want to see if I can get them running. Does anybody know if you can run Borderlands 1 or Black Ops on Linux anyway? Has anybody tried those out? Do they work? And I think Borderlands has a Steam version and a Windows version, which I've been told the Windows version is way more complete than the Steam version. Anybody have any experience with Borderlands 1? It's one of the few video games that I would like to keep playing, and I'd like to not have an Xbox to do it. If anybody knows of that, let me know. No distro is bad. If it works for you, use it. Absolutely. That's awesome. Greetings, Renard. How are you? I'm for any distro of Linux. Too bad they cannot say the same for Windows. Yeah. Bad Wolf plays +1. Awesome. Yes. Open Source Foundation. No. Yeah. Richard Stallman hates it when you combine free software and open source together. Hear that, and at least you didn't brick it. For hardcore user, Cubes OS. Yes. For your even, it's way behind me. For your even hardcore user, Cubes OS installed on external hard drives. Ooh, actually, I do have one here. I don't want to mess with that. I might accidentally push the off button on my main distro and crash the whole thing. But yeah, actually, I have a secondary hard drive in this computer that runs Cubes for a personal install. And I have another Cubes that runs on a thumb drive for a work install. So yeah, Cubes rocks. In fact, I have a whole tutorial series on Cubes. Just check my playlists and you'll find the Cubes tutorials there. I'll go ahead and card that for those watching later. Oh, I'm gonna use up my last card on my Cubes tutorial. If I can find it. There it is. Credit card for Cubes. All right, there we are. I've maxed out my cards on this video. That's fun. I don't get viruses on my Linux because I roll my own kernel. Nice. Peppermint OS. Yes, I have Peppermint OS. I'm actually writing. I'm writing a small micro book on Peppermint OS now. It's awesome. Not the book's not on Peppermint OS. The book is being written on the Peppermint OS operating system on a completely different topic. No matter way I say that, I'm using my Peppermint computer to write the book instead of my usual Surface computer to write the book, just because keeping stuff separate. Why not? Depending on whatever distro you're using, just make use of it and keep it simple. Yes. I'm never going to keep up on these comments. They're just coming in too fast. Oh boy, I hate Macs for the OS's anti-customizability. Yes, that is. I hate it for. Not only is it not customizable, but the UI totally sucks too. So I really want to customize it. Seems you can't customize. You can only customize the colors and the background on a Mac, which I don't like. Second is the false sense of security. Yep. Using Ubuntu GNOME 17.04. Love the customization. Sweet. Budgie is the solace. Yes, that's right. I was thinking that, but I thought I was thinking Bodhi. No, that's a distro. Budgie. Yes, that's cool. Yes, Ryan. False sense of security is worse than no security at all. Yes, that is true, and that's kind of wraps it back up with this whole antivirus thing. Is sometimes by running the antivirus, you think I can go to that shady website. I have antivirus. That may or may not actually be true. So yeah, the false, in a lot of your antivirus programs, realize that one thing is that it can, an antivirus can only protect you against known viruses. There's the heuristic scans now, which look for virus-like activity, but even that's not all that good. Made with Acronis, they're .tib files. That's horrible. Yeah, that's actually why I do not use any automated backup platform. I just backup folders. That's what I do, and verify that the folders work. Good, thanks for asking. Hope you're doing great on your side. Yes, I am doing great. Linux Mint is easier to troubleshoot, unlike Ubuntu as well. I don't know, I found Ubuntu pretty easy to troubleshoot as well, but I like the UI better in Cinnamon. Of course, it's Cinnamon, I could use Ubuntu. In fact, I have an Ubuntu Mate installed that I love. It's pretty nice. Linux Mint USB writer. Yes, USB writers and USB formatters on Linux Mint rock. I use those all the time. Mint gave more life to my computer than Windows 10. Yep. Seen cleaners on Android would show up on ads. Oh, this was hilarious. So The book I'm working on right now is a parody of this piece of crap that I'm still not going to show anybody quite yet. Quite yet. I will eventually unveil the crappy book that I read last week. That is just horrible thing. In fact, I wrote a 22-page document on what's wrong with the stupid thing. But a friend of mine and I got the idea to write a parody on the book. And so I'm writing a parody, and so I wanted to match the front cover as best as possible. So I scanned the front cover in, and then I used, you can actually extract the font extractors, and you can upload the fonts into like what font is it websites, and that'll back engineer the font and tell you what font you have. So I downloaded all of the actual real fonts that they're using for the cover of this book, and I'm going to use that to make a parody. And so I'm on my favorite place to get fonts is Font Squirrel. It's the first place I go if I'm looking for fonts. And, I like the site, and it's a pretty nice, clean site, and I trust them. And so I get on there and get to the bottom, and they don't give me this annoying overlayer. You see, you're on a pop-up blocker. We're going to be annoying. No, they give you a little thing at the very bottom of the page. It's like, hey, we see you're using an ad blocker, and you're seeing this because you have an ad blocker on, and would you consider, whitelisting our website? I'm like, you know what? I download fonts from the site. I like the site. I go up, and I remove, or I whitelist it from my ad blocker. So now, and I reload the page. They can display an ad. What's the ad I see? An ad for an ad blocker. Oh, I got a hoot out of that. That was great. So the backups were working before the HDD failure. Oh, man. So the backups were working and now they don't. I have no idea what to do about that. That's crazy. There's advantage having ZFS over ext4 with a file integrity. I know nothing about the ZFS file system. I use ext4. I like it. It works. Never had a problem with it, and so that's what I use. So I don't know. Zorin OS or Farron OS? If I remember that correctly, I think I would say Farron. Let me double check which one Zorin is again. Okay, between those two, well, I would go Farron personally for a couple reasons. The first is Zorin is actually GNOME, and I hate GNOME. So I'd use Fedora or Farron because it's cinnamon, and I like cinnamon, and I don't like GNOME. The next thing is Zorin gives you the ability to sort of mimic the Mac, of course, with the GNOME, which if you do like the interface of the Mac, GNOME is a great place to go. You also can get a Windows application. So they've done a great job with the GNOME shell to do some interesting things in Zorin. So it's not a bad OS, but if you really want the best out of it, you have to buy it. And I would support, donating to any distro that you're using for sure. But since this one is GNOME and they limit you out and they have these kind of gimmicky buy the extra bigger pack, which merely includes a bunch of packages you can install anyway. It seems to me a little more shady versus Farron OS, which is like everything's included. Now the downside to Farron is it's huge as a download. Last I checked, it was a 4 gigabyte download. If it's not a 4 gigabyte anymore, somebody let me know. But last I checked, it was a 4 gigabyte download. And I think the problem with them is they just include way too much stuff. And you might want to set your computer up the way you want to set it up and just delete a lot of other stuff. So I recommended to them, why not just download the base and do like what KDE does. Hey, we have some Windows-based themes, get them here. We have some Mac-looking themes, get them here. You want the Windows font packs, get them here. Rather, put links in there rather than packaging hundreds of thousands of files that most people will never do. Because really, when you get down to it, how frequently do you really change your desktop? You mess around with it when you first install the thing, you get it working the way you like it, but then you don't want to sit there. You don't want to sit there and have enough data, and so that's kind of what I'm looking at, what I'm considering. So, how's the stream doing? I'm getting a low stream notice. But my OBS is telling me good, so hopefully that's good. So between Zorin or Farron, I would go with Zorin. Or Farron is what I would do. Looks like people disagree with me. All right, Ryan, me and you. Let's go. I use Android, have yet to find a virus. Yeah, I mean, I think you'd be more inclined to get a security vulnerability because of some new security bug on an Android than you would be to download an app that actually does something to an Android. I mean, other than downloading an app. So, I mean, if you want the best security on your Android phone, don't download apps. Or, be very careful of the apps that you do download. Download only good ones. Kororo is like Manjaro to Arch, Mint to Ubuntu. Yep. Free Software Foundation. Open Source Software Foundation! Ha 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 ha! Alright. Play on Linux has a complete list of games that run on Linux. Do you think of O2 OS? I have no idea. I've never heard of that. Oh, I am so far behind in comments. I'm gonna not gonna be able to get through them all. Ubuntu-based distribution. I don't know. Never seen it before. I might have to look at that. It's ranked 286 on DistroWatch. Do you think it's possible to get a government smart card reader working in Linux? What? A government smart card reader in Linux? Explain. What is a government smart card reader? SteamOS. I should try and build SteamOS on this computer because it's buff enough to handle it. Has Zen vulnerability been fixed in Cubes? I have no idea. I didn't know there was a vulnerability in Cubes. I will have to look into that. Hear that, Ryan? That kid doing hard work on Farron. He said he's in the new update. Probably will keep it as a rolling release. All of the themes are downloadable. Oh, cool. Distribution approved by GNU Foundation. Oh, okay. Cool. I might have to look at it. I don't mind using Mac. Yeah, I don't mind it as much, but I mean, if somebody said, okay, you're going to a desert island, you may have one computer, it would not be a Mac. Boss has now put Windows 10 on all computers at work. I'm now evangelizing for Linux and one of my coworkers for Linux. Most of them are just too mesmerized by the wallpapers to listen to me. That's how they get you. Ooh, pretty yes, master. And then before you know it, the Eye of Sauron has already taken control of you, and you've inked all of your information, and they have captured all of your voice prints, and then all of a sudden, you will become the slave to Microsoft. I don't know if any of you remember, some of you are probably too young to remember, the old Nickelodeon series called Are You Afraid of the Dark? And I'm not sure if it's still on, but they did a reboot of it after the first group had all gone through puberty or something. They did a reboot with all their younger brothers and sisters, apparently, because, we can't have adolescents and older teenagers on Nickelodeon. We have to keep that demographic exactly where we want it. They closed out the first series and the first couple seasons. And they're like, what are we going to do? We like the show. Let's find some more kids that haven't hit puberty yet, put them back on, and then, now we're back to the show. Well, they did one way back when computers were first started, and it's hilarious. And I forget the name of the episode, but it was I don't know, something like Pets or something. Virtual Pets, I think the name of it was. If you get a chance to find Virtual Pets somewhere, it's awesome because it was like a computer program that would take you over, and it was hilarious. It's like Windows 10 nowadays. you know, life imitating art, imitating life, whatever. Please tell us why you hate GNOME. You know, I think part of it is it feels to me incomplete. Like they put a ton into the Dash launcher, but then you go up and you go up to like the status menu and you can't customize that whole part at all. You pull the whole thing down, it's all one thing. So it feels a little incomplete. Like, you know, the volume is all integrated with the Wi-Fi networks, is all integrated with the clock, all that kind of stuff. And then, you know, I also have an AMD graphics card. It doesn't work well with GNOME. To me, it's like the defaults on it in most distros. You can't work off the desktop. You got to enable the tweak tool to get that functionality back. And the basic UI of it is not a system I'm very productive on. So I like Cinnamon because of the productivity. So if you go back and look at my screen here, you know, I have this thing set up very much like a Windows computer. And that's the way I have it set up is extremely, extremely productive for me. So that's kind of why I like Cinnamon better. So it has a lot to do with how I work, the functionality. It's just, I just don't like how it's set up. That's kind of my take on it. But it is a matter of preference, you know. A lot of people really use. Oh, I'm out of Steam OS. Uses GNOME. Nope, I'm done. No. Do you listen to other Linux channels on YouTube? I mean, not like I don't try. Let's see, which ones do I do? Yes and no. I listen to a lot more of general news stuff rather than the straight Linux stuff. I like a lot of what Joe Collins does. I like Big Daddy Linux, Fast Gadgets. I think those are the ones that I would be most inclined to watch more of, mostly. So, you know, I like those ones. Linux Quest, of course. So those are kind of the ones, and sudo reboot. So those are the ones that I would catch. But really, I don't spend a ton time watching too many things, because I'll catch, I try and catch a lot of the different tech news in a lot of different places so that I have ideas gathered together for the Friday live show. I am a slave to the Eye of Sauron. Yes, master. I will dump Linux and install Windows 10 now. Wait, hold on. I don't want to do that. Customizability, they have you covered. If you want customizability, they have you covered. Yeah, I mean, you can customize it. I just don't want to do that. Windows 10 eats up RAM and CPU like crazy. I forgot to mention heats up the CPU temps. Don't forget, I don't know, has Windows 10 solved that 100% disk usage on the hard drives yet? Man, that would wipe out a hard drive. Why I hate GNOME, I love GNOME Shell. Why I hate GNOME? Why I hate GNOME, I love the GNOME Shell. You know, it's just a matter of personal preference. Virtual pets on Windows XP. Watch free dogs walk on the screen, but not virus tutorials is included in cat catching, dog eating virus. If you love GNOME, then you also love Unity. I don't love Unity. I like Unity. I'd rather use Unity than GNOME. But, oh well. Rocking with a command line interface on Debian 8 with i3 and others, yeah. You tried Solace. So what do you think? I have tried Solace. I put a card on the video and I put a link to my Solace review up above. I don't remember much about it other than that, so you can check out that video. I heard of the channel called Switch to Linux. Piggy Uniform. I have never heard of Switch to Linux. No, I do not watch that guy. He's crazy. Greetings, Piggy Uniform. How are you? Old story, but International Space Station switches from Windows to Linux for improved reliability. Scary. Getting late. See you later, Zoom. I think I might about wrap up here soon. I've done my GNU Linux distro tour. I'll just stick with Debian and Mate and a flavor of Unix. There you go. UI are for suckers. I use command line 7% of the time. Use OpenBox for YouTube and games. Cool. Yeah. I'm doing some Amazon AWS server stuff right now, so I'm in the terminal a lot right now. I've been fighting with a mail server most of the week. All right, folks. I think it is about time we wrap this bad boy up. Let's see if there's anything else we want to talk about. No, catch the first half of the video for the antivirus type stuff afterwards. Got into the comments. I'll leave that in the description there for anybody. But yeah, if you really want to go back and see the antivirus type stuff, the first half of the video was all on the antivirus. So with that, let's see. Is there a cat around? Let me see if I can get a kitty in here, and I'll feed a kitty before we go. All right, kitty, kitty, kitty. Whoa! I got some kitties. All right, we're going to switch to the kitty cam and feed the kitties, and then I will chat with you guys later. No, over here, kitties. Up here. Up here. Come on. There you go. Turn around. No, this way. Come on. This way. Turn around. There you go. Cute way to the camera. There you go. All right, we will catch you guys later.